The Football Show on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by the new and improved Boyle Sports Bet Builder. Now with 44 markets to choose from on every match.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
So 50 years ago this month, Matt Busby retired as Manchester United manager. They were reigning European Cup champions, and within 5 years they were in the old second division. A turbulent few years, to say the least.
That's what happens when a dynasty collapses, Joe.
So we're going to chat about that later on with the man who's written the book on those turbulent 5 years, Wilf McGuinness, Frank O'Farrell, of course, Cork man, and then Tommy Doherty, then Scotland manager, and he left the Scottish job to take over at Manchester United, and in his first season they were relegated. What's not talked about as much is that Doherty stayed on, got them straight back up into the top division. They were winning the FA Cup final against Liverpool in '77, finished third in the old first division, so the top tier. The average age of the team was 24, and they were set to do great things. And then it emerged that Tommy Doherty was having a 2-year affair with the physio's wife.
Yeah, I was just going to say that lead to the end of it, because I knew there was there was a sordid personal angle to
that. Was literally the end. Matt Busby, still very much an influential board director, took a massive umbrage with the thing, had a very moralistic view on things.
Interesting.
So that was the end for Tommy Doherty. He was fired. They didn't want to fire him, it seems. And
imagine a manager being fired for that now.
Mary Brown was the woman's name. Tommy Doherty and Mary Brown married each other and are still together today. Tommy Doherty in his 90s.
So it was basically a love story then?
It was late. I mean, it obviously started out very much as a tawdry affair.
It was a love story eventually.
But actually was a love story now, we can say. It was a love story. It was love that brought the end.
It was love. It was meant to be.
No, it was. So they should
have just given the relationship time to see if it was going to work out.
Tommy Doherty's in a documentary. We're talking with the author of the book, Too Big to Go Down. And he also worked in the BT documentary on this period. And Tommy Doherty, now 90 or 91, is very much part of the documentary. Still has a full head of hair and still has a lot of bite about him. You know, says it was, you know, I'm amazed I was fired over a matrimonial issue.
Like it.
Yeah. But still thinks it was crazy he was sacked. But did a good job. And actually that, you know, quite often how the Manchester United story around that time ends is with Dennis Law's back heel. And that was that. But actually they bounced back fantastically well. And the Tommy Doherty team is seen as a potentially great team that split up very quickly after he left.
It is mad. I saw the FA Cup show last night, and maybe it was Blackpool on Sunday, and there was a tribute paid. I can't think of the guy's name. A guy who had passed away, a club legend, who had basically during his pomp had
Wolves.
Was it a Wolves player?
Because Robbie Keane was there. It was Liverpool Wolves.
I know. Yeah, Blackpool played Arsenal.
Daly.
Was it? But he'd berated. One of his things he was known for on the pitch was like berating people for using bad language.
Is that right?
That was one of his
things. Touch of class.
These were the things that just weren't tolerated.
What would he make of Wayne Hennessy, Dan?
Well, this is it. He wouldn't be too fond of Wayne Hennessy. Do people need to be brought up to date with the Wayne Hennessy story?
Can I just jump in for a quick second?
Okay.
Right, we're in the smartphone era.
Right.
I had heard the Wayne Hennessy story earlier on in the news round before I saw the Wayne Hennessy photo.
Okay.
I think you benefit enormously from seeing the photo.
Yes. Can you describe the photo, Joe?
Well, you see, I mean, so Wayne Hennessy is out with his teammates and...
He's out for a meal.
Yeah, the photo was taken by a German...
Grimsby in the FA Cup, so, you know.
It's a big one. The photo seems to have been taken by his German teammate.
Max Meyer.
So there's several teammates there. Some of them are just looking at the camera, others are waving. And so Wayne Hennessy was accused of making a Nazi salute, but seems to have denied that's what he was doing. So I thought, well, maybe it's vague or maybe it's grey. What that description doesn't really describe is that it's the two-handed Nazi salute. So the old left hand has gone to do the fake moustache thingy. Now that's where it starts going from accidental and appearing.
Appears to be doing the fake moustache thing.
Because I mean,
crucial words, Joe. Appears to be doing.
No, allegedly appearing, all that kind of stuff. Denies it strongly. But I just thought, well, maybe there could have been a straight-armed wave that, you know, without Wayne Hennessy thinking, might have looked like a Nazi salute. But actually, it's the left hand which is his undoing, I feel.
Yes.
So that's... Yeah. I just think you need to see the photo to understand.
Well, if
Wayne Hennessy wasn't just waving, in my humble opinion, which he denies.
If people have, we mentioned earlier in the news round, if people happen to have watched that episode of Father Ted, where Ted happens to accidentally stand behind that window pane with the unfortunate sort of
perfectly square piece of dirt.
Yeah, and that position, and makes a gesture, just, you know, an innocent gesture.
Yeah.
It looks a particular way. This picture has a certain appearance to it that provoked some comments. So Wayne Hennessy then has to get on to Instagram or Twitter late on Sunday night.
I'm sure he does. It's a serious matter.
He does, and it's a well-crafted statement.
Okay.
People have watched the thick of it and a few other programmes of this nature.
Go on, all right, okay. So here we go.
Yesterday evening, I had a meal with my teammates and we had a group photograph.
Yeah.
He starts.
Yeah.
I waved and shouted at the person taking the picture to get on with it, and at the same time, put my hand over my mouth to make the sound carry. It has been brought to my attention.
Hang on a second. So sorry, he's saying he waved to say. Actually, sorry, I'm not going to reenact.
Do not reenact it, Joe.
He waved.
We don't want you making a statement later on tonight.
He waved to say hurry up and put his hand over his mouth so the sound would carry.
Get on with it, mate. So we have a whole team full of people smiling or looking gormlessly at the camera, but Wayne at the back is concerned by the time that this is taken.
They're in a big rush, I'm sure.
He's in a rush. I mean, the starters could be on the way, and he shouts at his German, the German taking the photograph.
It's another unfortunate coincidence. Okay, so sorry.
He continues.
I to say, so, yeah.
Yeah, it has been brought to my attention that frozen in a moment by the camera, this looks like I am making a completely inappropriate type of salute.
Right.
I can assure everyone that I would never ever do that, and any resemblance to that kind of gesture is absolutely coincidental. Love and peace, Wayne.
Fair enough. Look, he's entitled to deny anything.
So unfortunately then, this naturally, the response seems to be less, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be trivialising it, it was less outrage and more humorous. The response from people sort of were laughing there at the whole kind of, I mean, okay, this is an interesting statement to have to be released. Now, my favourite response is someone has doctored an old Twitter account here to imagine that it's 1995 and Eric Cantona logs on to his Twitter account after a game against Crystal Palace. 26th of January 1995, his statement. Yesterday evening, I was playing against Crystal Palace, says this Cantona figure. I saw a wasp about to attack a young child in the crowd and, being a footballer, thought it would be best if I kicked it away. It's been brought to my attention that frozen in a moment by the camera, this looks like I am trying to kung fu kick a Crystal Palace supporter. I can assure everyone I would never ever do that, and any resemblance to that kind of gesture is absolutely coincidental. Love and peace, Eric.
Listen.
There we go.
We're all entitled to our own reality. It's like Jeremy Corbyn a few weeks back saying he said stupid person and not stupid woman, even though his lips clearly made the shape of a W and man.
Well, I'm not clear who actually put the photograph. So it was posted on Max's Instagram story, his German teammate's Instagram story. So, I mean, is he furious with Max, or was this something in the moment?
I'd say Max put it up without even seeing the gesture. I don't think you'd land your teammate in it. Especially when it's such a coincidental issue.
Well, this is it. I mean, there's a lot of questions to be raised about Max's role.
Unless Max spotted it and thought, do you know what? I've had enough of you doing this to me, Wayne. Every time. Every bloody time. You keep shouting to me to get on with my pictures. Yes. And this keeps happening. Don't put your hand over your mouth and shout at me like that. Yeah. So, what do I presume this will just go away for Wayne. Yeah, he probably had to do the statement, but I'm not sure if it's actually... It's probably made it a bigger story. So, what else is going on in the world of football then? The world of football. By the way, it's still Spurs 1, Chelsea 0, 55 minutes on the clock. Harry Kane's penalty. The VAR penalty. A few other bits and bobs going on. Well, there's an Everton meeting going on tonight. We should say it's one of these great things that happen now, where they have to come out to a public meeting to shareholders and actually give some honest quotes, you know, and actually speak about situations. So. Farhad Moshiri's been there. Now, it seems that Everton are going to build a new stadium. Well, that's been floated, obviously. And one of the earlier stories that's coming out of the gig tonight is, you know, they're going to spend 500 million, and Moshiri's pumping a lot more money into it, which is grand. I think that's what people want to hear. But Moshiri obviously had to take the stage at some point to speak about the club's current situation, and he's thrown out a couple of choice quotes. It seems like he's maybe a bit frustrated about the amount of money he's spent. And yet Everton are still sort of floundering around wherever they are. And his direct quote, which is doing the rounds, is, "I have spent 250 million on turning a museum into a competitive outfit." Is his line. Okay. And also says, "I look at the table and it is just not good enough." So some nervy moments. I mean, he does say, "We put a big bet on Marco," well, that's Marco Silva, "and we stick with him." But it's just the kind of language and tone that would make you slightly uncomfortable. If reminiscent of there when you were describing that when you watch the Sunderland documentary on Netflix, you get a real sense from that Ellis Short put in a ton of money into Sunderland and thought, well, that's going to do the trick, and then actually was shocked and appalled to find out it hadn't, and almost lost interest. And it seems here like Farhad Mashiri was expecting things to be a whole lot sweeter for all the money he's put in.
And it's just not. I mean, the whole Leicester thing is incredible, but you step away from that. Like, it's hard to put a figure on what sort of finance is required to break into this established elite that are pumping in that Champions League money every year.
I tell you what, it's not for the lack of trying. They're trying to get money, Everton. There was the story last week about how much it costs to be a mascot at Premier League clubs, and Everton are charging quite a lot of money. If you want to be the Everton mascot, £718 for your little kid to be the mascot.
It's a lot of cash.
So when you look at all the kids now at Premier League games and you think, God, that's so cute. I hope they won a prize from the community.
Yeah.
No, they are spoiled brats.
It sort of explains why those lads dressing up their mate for a stag went lower down the league ladder, you know?
Everton, £718. West Ham, £700. Leicester, £600. Spurs, £405. Wolves, £395. Free. Arsenal, Chelsea, Fulham, Huddersfield, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Southampton and Everton. Okay, so they're all not brats, I take that back.
No.
They're mostly not then.
Some of the clubs there have other dubious regimes attached to them.
No, I'm sure.
Free for mascots, though.
But it's such a penny pinching way to try and make a few quid in the grand scheme of things. In the grand scheme of hundreds and hundreds of millions flowing in, but this is charging kids £700 to be a mascot.
But this is how, isn't how the wealthy stay wealthy, you know?
I guess it is.
They don't, it's like you hear these sort of multi-million clubs who spend X amount in hospitality, like will come to Ireland and try and offer, £500 for a player or something, do you know what I mean?
What's the word on Matt Doherty then?
Yeah, well, Matt Doherty, I had a story in The Independent today about Matt Doherty's current situation. When I say situation, he's having an absolutely fantastic year. He's having, he's probably being the standout Irish player this season, in tandem with Declan Rice, if you want to sort of count him as Irish, which we still can. But he's 26, he's on a deal that was negotiated while he was in the Championship, and naturally enough, he's in the big league doing pretty well, and that leads to interest in Matt Doherty. Right. And he doesn't have an agent. He's never really operated, say, with an agent. He's been at one club pretty much since 2010, since he left Bows to go to Wolves.
He's on about 20 grand a week.
That sort of ballpark figure, we believe, yeah. And
contract goes to 2021.
That's excellent money in the Championship, and I'm sure there's no suggestion that Matt Doherty's unhappy in any way, by the way, but he's in a dressing room where people will be earning a lot more. He's in a league where people will be earning a lot more, and I think people are aware of that. And
I suspect he'll be the lowest earning player of the month this year in the Premier League.
I would have thought so, yeah. And so there's competition, and he's moving into a new bracket now where it's not just, say, clubs want him, but there'll be representatives and agents and people wanting to get Matt Doherty on board. That's certainly something that has been happening, right? Because they know that there's a lucrative deal probably to be done here. And but what it seems like Matt Doherty is leaning towards doing is signing up with Jorge Mendes, which is that is the big league. Yeah. That's when you're moving into. I don't think he's had an Irish playing client, before. And then most of the Wolves squad, of course, are Mendes clients. Okay, he's an advisor to the club, and he's been the driving force in bringing like Ruben Neves and Rui Patricio and Matinho and all these players there. And I saw a pre-season piece about a Wolves game where it was sort of, the theory was that 9 of the starting 11 will be Mendes clients, and the 2 exceptions will be Matt Doherty and Conor Cody, who were the 2 players that were there before this sort of turnover happened. So it's sort of logical that those 2 at some point would be given the nod. But I guess it opens interesting doors if that's the way that he goes. Some of these Mendes players move from club to club. You wonder longer term what happens to Matt Doherty. It means in the shorter term he's more likely to stay in Wolves, when it would appear there's actually other clubs looking at him very seriously now. But if he goes with Mendes, I guess it means he probably stays where the Mendes club is right now. But also, longer term, it is pretty interesting because he is getting better. Like he's 26, so you can spin it. But the other thing here is, he's in a great position, and people would argue, and I understand good influences around him, not wanting him to get unsettled by anything. But the flip side of that is, might be his window. This might be his chance to get into that high earning bracket that he deserves on current form. And once you get there, you sort of stay there for the rest of your career. You know,
certainly slow down on the way down.
Like you see. I'm not mentioning it in a piece today. The likes of Gareth Barry, he was on 80 grand a week at West Brom. He was on 80 grand a week at West Brom because he was at Man City. And once you graduate to that territory at that club, then it's almost hard to come down. I think Darren Fletcher was on very good money as well. Like once you get up to that level, you sort of tend to stick with it. And I mean, you just have to, there comes a point where you have to look after number one, and if this is your time to strike, you have to do that deal and get up there, because this could make a big difference to your longer term life.
This will be the most lucrative contract he'll ever sign. Yeah,
you would think so. At 26, at 27, you know, wherever he goes, whatever he does, if you sign a 4 or 5 year deal, this is the big one. So you have to get it right, and you know, make sure that you get the best deal for yourself. And I suppose there's a debate there. Obviously, Mendes has a very close relationship with Wolves too, so you can.
Is there not a conflict there?
Well, I mean, this has always been. This has been raised by opponents of Wolves in the Championship last year, and certainly that link allowed them to bring in very good players. But to spin it into a negotiations context.
Well, just if I'm Doherty and Mendes is my agent, is he working for me or is he working for the club?
Well, that's a very.
Matt, I can get you 50.
Well, that's a question. I think that's like that is one of the angles that spins out of this. I think there's a glamour in going with the Mendes thing, and there's a probably pragmatism in terms of the Wolves manager was Mendes' first ever client, first ever deal he done with the Wolves manager.
Does Mendes stand up in front of all his clients like he did at Ronaldo's dinner and tell him how amazing he is? You are the greatest. I mean, I'm not sure if you could do them all at the same time. That would sort of defeat the purpose of the individual praise. But he's got probably angles to think about there. But I mean, it's a good position. It's a short career, and you know he's earned good money throughout it. But this is another level. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, Spurs are still 1-0 up on Chelsea. 64 minutes on the clock. Next up, 50 years since Matt Busby announced his resignation and kicked off a fairly infamous 5-6 years at the club.
Football on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by the new and improved Boyle Sports Bet Builder. Now with 44 markets to choose from on every match.
Come down and get a sense of humor.
You Couldn't Make It Up is back. It's News Talk's irreverent and impertinent panel show where news and comedy collide.
Don't go to the hospital just yet.
Each week, a host of funny folk will pull apart the stories making the headlines and reassemble them in a pair of surreal and downright silly performances, all in front of a live audience.
Go on, do the trick. Go on.
For free tickets to the recording of You Couldn't Make It Up's first show on Thursday, January 17th at Tramline in Dublin, just go to newstalk.com/events.
I would.
Would you?
You Couldn't Make It Up with Pat O'Mahony in partnership with Tesco on News Talk.
The Harvey Norman Big Sale is now on, with big savings on home appliances, like the Dyson V8 Absolute Cord-Free Stick Vacuum with up to 40 minutes fade-free suction for just €349. Or get the Dyson Hot and Cool Fan for just €349, saving you €100. And at Harvey Norman, we've matched all competitors' prices, so no need to shop around. The Harvey Norman Big Sale, in store and online. Don't miss out.
Go, Harvey, go! Thinking of finance for a new car? Then visit mypcp.ie first. A new website brought to you by Renault to help answer all your questions about PCPs and tackle any myths you may have heard. In just a few clicks, you can estimate your current car's value and match it with a new personal contract plan. Get closer to the car you want. See mypcp.ie today. Finance is made under a hire purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See mypcp.ie.
I will never see my wife and daughter again.
Unaccompanied learners can lead to unaccompanied lives. And now the law has changed. Gardaí have the power to seize a vehicle driven by an unaccompanied learner. What's more, the owner of the vehicle faces prosecution and a fine of up to €1,000. Don't drive unaccompanied and never loan a car to an unaccompanied or unlicensed driver. From the Road Safety Authority, visit rsa.ie to see Noel Clancy's story.
Football Index is reinventing football betting. You can buy and sell the world's top players. Their value may go up and down, but it's not over with the final whistle like a regular bet. Football Index reinventing football betting.
Start building your portfolio today at footballindex.co.uk or download the app now. New customers only, minimum deposit and conditions apply. Gamble responsibly.
This Friday, experience the magic of Stan and Ollie.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stan Laurel and Mr. Oliver Hart.
We're two peas in a pod. Critics are calling Stan and Ollie extraordinary.
We certainly are.
It's dazzling, hilarious, and incredibly moving.
Such a wonderful reception.
We're not done yet. Steve Coogan and John C. Reilly are absolute perfection. 5 stars. Book tickets now.
2 seats, front row.
Stan and Ollie in cinemas Friday.
You don't have to be a genius to find the best deals in tiles, bathrooms and wood. Just get to Tile Style for up to 50% off tiles, 25% off bathrooms and stone, plus massive reductions on wood flooring. Tile Style, Ballymount Retail Centre, Ireland's leading tile, bathroom and wood flooring showroom. See tilestyle.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
It is, of course, January 2019, which means we have hit the 50-year anniversary of Matt Busby announcing he would be retiring as Manchester United manager. Manchester United reigning European champions at the time, and very famously or infamously, within 5 short years, they were somehow playing in the old second division. We are joined on the line by Wayne Barton, who has chronicled a turbulent and infamous time in Manchester United history in his book, Too Good to Go Down. Wayne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, 50 years since Matt Busby sat up and said, I'm done. Was there any great surprise when Busby retired in January 1969?
Yeah, I think it was a massive shock. As it would be, it was seismic for United. Those who probably knew Busby best might not have been shocked by it because the signs were there for a while, and it was very much the feeling that Wembley was the culmination of a journey rather than the start of another great team. And as he said in his announcement for the retirement, I think the headline was, I've lost my grip, on the modern football players and the celebrity status that is nothing like it is today. But then it was George Best was the 5th Beatle, and it was a little bit different to what he was used to dealing with. And I think it was he just felt that the time was right to step aside and let a younger man. He thought it was a younger man's game at that time. However, I mean, like we said, I think Wembley '68 was the culmination rather than the start of the next great side.
We do predominantly want to talk to you about what happened over the next 5, 6, 7 years. But on Busby for a moment, is the general consensus amongst people who knew him and who were aware of how things were working that he was right, that he had not lost touch, but he felt himself he had to a degree lost touch? But did people generally feel it was the right time for him to go? I'm not quite sure how old he was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, he was younger than Sir Alex was when Sir Alex called it a day. But Busby was also tormented by Munich. He was much older than his years at that point, and he was ready. I mean, it was a miracle that it lasted as long as it did, to get them to Wembley and build that other great side. There was a school of thought that, he was becoming, I don't want to say the words because they sound horrible in the context of what we're talking about, but there was the idea that he was becoming a bit of a tactical dinosaur. There was some new kids on the block, Reevy, Clough. Ramsey had won the World Cup without wingers. There was a lot of innovation going on, and there was the idea that Busby was falling behind. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think football's cyclical, and I think that as we've seen with United, there's in the contemporary age, there's a certain idea about identity that should be adhered to as well. But I just think he'd sort of lost his interest a little bit once he'd won the biggest prize.
It prompted this amazing period then. Wilf McGuinness, Frank O'Farrell and ultimately Tommy Doherty. If we start with McGuinness, Busby's immediate replacement, he was 31 years of age. It was a shock all round that Wilf McGuinness was given the job. He knew a lot of the players. He'd had a playing career himself, but then through injury had got into coaching early on, and even he himself wasn't aware he was getting the job until relatively late in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think United had quoted a couple of names before then as well. the idea that Jock Stein might have taken over. So I'm not sure how late in the process it was that Wilf became the front runner for the job. And again, it was a fairly revolutionary thing for United to have done at that point. Appoint from within, get someone of their own to sort of lead using the same principles. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for Wilf because, like you say, he was a player for the club, but he never reached the heights of a Best, a Lowe, or a Charlton. So it was difficult to get their respect. Especially the ones we hadn't played alongside, such as a Dennis Law or an Alex Stepney, who had won the greatest prizes, and to try and get the same respect out of for Wilf that they did for Sir Matt would have been very difficult indeed, and that proved to be his undoing, really.
So I mean, he was no shrinking violet. He did attempt to impose himself on that dressing room.
Yeah, I mean, he tried what he could, but I mean, he would make an example out of, for example, Bobby Charlton. And if that didn't go well, in the example that's used in the book is a great story that's told by Willie Morgan, that Bobby wanted to go to a meeting down in London, and he attended. He got dressed after training, and he came back out in his suit, and he had his hands in his pockets, and apparently they weren't allowed to do that at training because it broke code or something. So Wilf made him do 10 press ups in the mud in the suit, which didn't go down well because it was Bobby Charlton. And there was another time Alex Stepney was dropped, and instead of talking to Wilf about it, he went straight to Busby because, as he still described Busby as the boss, and Busby sort of smoothed the waters to get Stepney back in the side, but the sort of damage was being done by that kind of act, really.
Yeah. The Bobby Charlton story highlights a fairly cack-handed approach.
I don't know about cack-handed. I just think it was one of those perhaps an understandable thing that he tried to do to try and show people who were boss, but at that point the results weren't great, and it was very difficult for him to exert his control when the results on the pitch weren't backing up his quality as a manager, so very difficult for him to stamp that authority.
He was Busby's choice. What did Busby see in him, do you think?
I think it was the idea, the same kind of principles that Fergie said when Moyes was appointed, that sort of cut from the same cloth. And the idea that, Busby, after he retired, he named it like a list of 5 or 6 criteria in the newspaper that United managers must have. And McGuinness sort of fit most of them, apart from having the experience. So the idea was that because he knew the club, and I guess that was basically it. The idea that he knew so much about the club that he could keep it running like a well-oiled machine. But I think it was a novel idea, but it just didn't work.
Quite naturally, you can lay a lot of the blame for what happened at the doors of the various managers here, but we are talking about an ageing, if once great team, and that was a huge issue for all the managers to try and confront. And then you have George Best, the complications in his life are boiling away. There's a clip here I want to play, and it's in the documentary that was, I guess, you consulted on, and your book was a part of the BT Sport documentary, Too Good to Go Down. And it's Bobby Charlton speaking, it seems like on the night that Manchester United have been relegated, or certainly in the weeks afterwards in 1974, and his general sense of the malaise, as you'll hear, that set in even pre-68. Have a listen.
Who do you blame? I would think it stems from the fact that United were on top for so long that unless you're in the position to recognise it and recognise that you need change, that you're going to fail. And I'm afraid that's what happened with United. Fortunately, we won the European Cup in 1968. Everything since that seems to have been an anticlimax. But possibly Sir Matt Busby missed out and should have changed the team a lot. Possibly even prior to that. I think possibly for the past 3 or 4 years there's been lots of occasions when I could have been left out of the team, really. But maybe reputation swayed his decisions. I think it should have been changed a lot earlier than it has been now. But it's very sad, see the club going down, and I hope they do better.
Is there a general consensus on Busby's comments?
Yeah, that's the funny thing is about those comments from Bobby was that United hadn't been relegated. I think those comments were after his own retirement in '73.
Okay.
So he's speaking in a general sense about United's malaise, but I think that actually makes his comments actually stronger. They're more pertinent with that, because he's not speaking with the hindsight of, oh well, they've been relegated. Obviously there are problems, so.
Right, that's amazing to hear, because the documentary starts with that interview and it does look as if it's been given literally almost a match of the day on the night that they've been relegated, and they've said, well, let's get in Bobby Charlton. So I didn't realise how prescient actually he was being.
Yeah, and to be fair to himself as well, I mean, to say that he could have been dropped. However, the stories along the timeline of, it's all right, Charlton saying that with hindsight, and I don't want to speak ill of one of the greatest legends that's ever kicked a ball for the club, but there was he was a major player in the problems that United were having. In terms of the player power. I mean, Frank O'Farrell, Wilf's successor, dropped Bobby for a game, and Bob Busby went to O'Farrell to tell him that he shouldn't drop Charlton. And it's funny to hear Charlton say that he could have been dropped, but then when it actually came to it, no footballer actually likes to be dropped, do they? So
no, it's true. So Frank O'Farrell, we're all familiar with. He's a Cork man. A number of the players in the documentary, well, they were unanimous in saying that he was a very good man, but a number felt he was quite lost, or was dwarfed by the scale of the job. Talk to us about Frank O'Farrell's era.
Yeah, I think what happened was he hit the ground running. His first 6 months in charge were brilliant. It was I forgot the name of his assistant, Musgrove, came in and did a great job. They were the young thing in England. They'd come from Leicester City. They had a great reputation, and they breathed new life into these United players. Because they did have a reputation elsewhere. I think that the likes of Best and Charlton did buy into it at the start, and Dennis Law, I think they all thought, well, all right, we'll give him a chance. And for the first 5 or 6 months, they played as well as they had done at any point under Busby. The football was absolutely incredible. But the problem was, like you said earlier, they had a leaky defence, an ageing defence as well, and the games that they were winning, scoring 4 goals, 5 goals, but they were conceding 2 or 3 goals every game nearly. And then when that sort of turnaround came, where the attacking goals didn't come quite so often, and they were still shipping goals, that was the first sticky period for O'Farrell, naturally. But at that point, he hadn't made a change yet, and I think he couldn't believe how well it had gone. But then he hadn't been as prescient as, we were saying Charlton was earlier. He hadn't been as prescient with that. He thought that it might carry on for the rest of the season. And by the time he started making changes, it was really too late to turn around the general form of the side. And he brought in some great players, don't get me wrong, Martin Buchan needed time to adapt, and he couldn't stem that ship all by himself, especially when he was that first signing brought in by O'Farrell. So, the players who were so successful, naturally a little bit hesitant to get used to this new leader in the centre of defence as well. So after Christmas, it sort of fell by the wayside.
Yeah. So they finished 8th in Farrell's first season, the second half of the season a disaster, and then ultimately Christmas 1972 he was sacked, which United 3rd from bottom. O'Farrell can count himself very unlucky in that it was around that period that George Best became unmanageable. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the summer, his first summer in charge, well, his only summer in charge really at the club, the pre-season was dominated by Best. Best had gone off and he had to convince him to come back, and I don't even think it was a case of O'Farrell desperately trying to convince him, but it was more on Best's whim that, I'm going to come back now, I didn't really want to quit. I had sort of said that to get away from the press speculation, because he'd grown disinterested by United's, by his own admission, by the way. I'm not doing him a disservice with that. Best had grown disinterested by United's loss of form, because Dennis Law was struggling with a knee injury. Bobby Charlton was one of the older heads now, and there was a lot of responsibility on Best's shoulders, and he wasn't interested when United was struggling. So that left O'Farrell with a massive problem, obviously, because he had to start thinking about how he was going to replace these players. I'm sure he had the idea. Obviously, he brought in Ian Storey-Moore as a like-for-like for George Best, but then Best came back, and you can't drop a George Best. You can't kick him out of the club, but he became a massive problem for O'Farrell.
We can probably deduce a lot about this period in Manchester United history by the advice that Tommy Doherty says Frank O'Farrell gave him upon replacing Frank O'Farrell. They had played together at Preston, so they were on relatively good terms, even though Tommy Doherty, then the Scotland manager, leaving the Scottish job to take the Manchester United job. And he said that the advice Frank O'Farrell gave him was just beware of Busby and beware of some of the players. Denis Law, Paddy Crerand in particular, Willie Morgan. If they're not in the team, they'll stir up trouble for you. So we'll come on to the players in a moment. Beware of Busby. I think a lot of us from this distance do wonder what kind of presence Busby was after he retired. Was he toxic? Was he inadvertently toxic? Was he absolutely fine?
I think toxic's the wrong word, but I know what you're saying. I don't disagree with the principle of it, because I think...
I'll change it to unhelpful.
Yeah, but it was more like he thought he was being helpful. So because he was that go between because he was when he left, or when he sort of retired, he became the general manager of the club. So he was effectively an administration manager, but he wasn't really. The players still saw him around the place. He was still the boss. So they went above his head to Wilf, from Wilf to Busby, and that never changed with O'Farrell. And it was more difficult for O'Farrell. Obviously, McGuinness would acquiesce to that because Busby was his superior for so many years, and he would never speak ill of him, whereas it was a lot more jarring for O'Farrell, who thought he would have more control over these kind of matters. But the players were still going above his head to Busby. Busby was very loyal to a lot of these players who'd been with him on this very emotional journey. They'd won him this prize that had become his life's mission, really, and he couldn't stand to go against them. So effectively, he was trying to smooth the waters over, but created more harm than good, unwittingly. You know, he wasn't meaning to do it. Unfortunately, that was the problem that he caused, because in every act of involvement, he was undermining the manager, whether he liked it or not, because the players were only going to him if they wanted to undermine O'Farrell.
So Frank O'Farrell also mentioned some of the players, if they're left out of the team, they're going to stir up trouble, like Denis Law, who ultimately Tommy Doherty got rid of. Law was having injections in his knee. He was rarely fit at that stage. So these were really difficult players to manage, it seemed, at that time in their careers.
Possibly. I mean, you've got the idea that these experienced players who are coming to the end with egos that match that, they could be quite difficult to manage. I mean, spoke to Denis for the documentary, and the idea of him getting, the injections in the knees, from his point of view, he was doing more harm to his body than good in terms of wanting to come back and wanting to fight through the pain to help a struggle inside. However, when it translates into poor performances on the pitch and the fact that he wasn't training regularly, it does come across as a selfish pursuit, although it wasn't that. He was doing that for the good of the side. There are well-documented problems that Doherty had with many of those players, such as Willie Morgan and Paddy Crerand, who was retired by that point. I'm not sure how many problems O'Farrell had with those. I think his major problems were with Charlton and Best, and perhaps Stepney as well. There was a few of those senior players. Crerand, maybe because he ended Crerand's career, but then you have and we are talking about a tumultuous period in United history, but these are also football problems that happen at every single club. It's not like O'Farrell unwittingly rocked the boat more than any other manager. Every manager has to be a responsible for ending players' careers at clubs, and they're never going to be popular when they do that.
As I mentioned, Doherty was the Scottish manager, and he was given the Manchester United job. He is a force of nature, and even in the documentary, he's in his 90s now, or just turned 90. He's still got his full head of hair, and he's still, we'll get on to his sacking ultimately, but he's unhappy about that. He is still spiky, I would say. So he was definitely spiky in his day.
Yeah, very on it. He's got his side, which he's entitled to, and that differs from a lot of the players' opinions. But as Paddy Barclay says in the film, and he said it perfectly, that every decision that Doherty took was for the benefit of Manchester United. And like I was saying with O'Farrell, particularly O'Farrell could have done it, but he wasn't allowed to because he was sacked. Doherty was then given that responsibility of clearing out those players and starting afresh. So he was never going to be completely popular because there were some massive names that he had to get rid of. And yeah, they did it in such a quick turnaround as well, which is, that's pretty crazy to think of the speed in which Charlton, Lowe and Best all left the club.
Yeah. Difficult players to replace, and George Best came back. It seems Matt Busby maybe interfering again, tempted Best back, and that didn't last very long, and he went off the rails again very, very quickly. And in 1974, the unthinkable happens and Manchester United are relegated. A part of this story, I have to confess, anytime I watch documentaries about this period, it tends to end with the Dennis Law goal. That's kind of got it, what a fall from grace, and Dennis Law relegated Manchester United. Now, Dennis Law is at pains to point out that actually Birmingham against Norwich relegated Manchester United, although we all point to his goal. And then it's the rebuilding that Tommy Doherty does, which is quite impressive. Straight back up out of the old second division, and very, very quickly they win the 77 Cup final against Liverpool. The average age of the side is 24 years of age. They finished third in the first division. There is a sense by 1977, 96, 97, 76, 77, that Manchester United are back, that Doherty has done a fairly extraordinary rebuilding job, and the team is young, and they are all set to kick on before the most unpredictable of things happens.
Yeah, you can have different opinions of that because it's a lost potential thing, isn't it? Much in the same way that we talk about the lost potential of the 58 side who sadly perished and what they could have gone on to achieve. Obviously, it's not on the same level of that whatsoever, but it is, when we look at the direct comparison, the 96 United side, which beat Liverpool in the FA Cup final, had exactly the same average age as that one in 77. Right. So we know what they went on to achieve. And obviously that 77 side was broken up fairly swiftly after, some of the major components that side were taken out. They could have gone on to better, especially when you look at Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa and what they went on to achieve in the following years. It's not just a matter of saying, United had to beat this behemoth in Liverpool. There are some second division sides who were down there with United who went and won European Cups. So there's a very strong argument to say that United could have ended that wait for a league title or even a European Cup much sooner than what they did have to wait. But we'll never know. And to be fair, I think Doherty he's still in a stage of his rebuilding job. There's 2 or 3 more players to add to that side, certainly, before they could say that they were likely contenders.
The end for Doherty comes, it's pretty famous, I think, at this stage. He fell in love with Mary Brown, who happened to be the wife of the Manchester United physio and one of Doherty's real allies, Laurie Brown. And a 2-year affair surfaced, and Manchester United took the decision to sack Doherty. In the documentary, he certainly feels it was the wrong decision. He says he's amazed at the decision that a matrimonial thing could affect his position. I hadn't realised actually that he married Mary Brown, Tommy Doherty, and they're still together. So it proved to be a lifelong love affair. But that was the end, the most bizarre of circumstances. Matt Busby, according to Martin Edwards, was pretty moralistic about the whole thing in his view as to what should happen to Doherty when it surfaced.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Busby's was the defining vote, so to speak. I think at that point, I don't think they wanted to sack him. I think that was the last option. But when it came down to it, there was the idea that obviously this affair had been going on for a long time, and the crux of the matter is one of them would have to lose their job, either Doherty or the physio, and you can't sack the physio for that. That would have been completely the wrong thing to do, and they had to sack Doherty. I've grown very fond of Tommy. This isn't the only project I've worked on with him. He's helped me with numerous books in the past, and I'm the first and foremost advocate of how good that side could have been and what a great job he did do, and how highly he should be commended for the work that he did do. I just can't see a way that he could have carried on, really, in the job that he had, because it would have been difficult for the players to have respected him after that as well.
An extraordinary couple of years, and it all kicked off this month 50 years ago with Matt Busby announcing his retirement. Wayne Barton, author of Too Good to Go Down. Thanks so much for chatting to us, Wayne.
Thank you.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Some jobs need a master, a mortgage master, with dedication, focus, and expertise. If you need results, you need someone with decades of know-how, with no distractions, no time wasting, and no faffing around. Not a jack of all trades, but the master of one. For a job as important as your mortgage, that's EBS, the Mortgage Masters. Search EBS Mortgage Masters to find out more. Lending criteria, terms, and conditions will apply. EBS DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The National Manufacturing and Supply Chain Exhibition 2019 at the City West Hotel on January 17th. With 450 exhibitors, 200 speakers and 4,000 delegates. Hear from an impressive lineup of manufacturing leaders, including experts on Brexit, smart manufacturing, IoT, procurement, sustainability, 3D printing, robotics and much more. Register for free at manufacturingevent.com.
At Blackrock Clinic, we offer direct access to our expert team of endoscopy specialists. So if you're concerned about a stomach or bowel issue, we can quickly find the cause and whether it's serious or not. With a referral from your GP, an appointment can be arranged within 24 hours. For access to a world-class endoscopy unit, think first. Think Blackrock Clinic. Blackrock Clinic, when your experience needs ours.
People often ask us, is it the locally sourced oats or the unique steaming process that makes Flahaven's Progress Oatlets taste so rich and creamy? It's a fair question. And who would know better than our long-serving factory foreman? We caught up with him on his tea break in the canteen.
Well, it's all to do with the tried and tested way we collect. So it's all perfectly clear. No doubt about it.
And there you have it.
Flahaven's, not your run-of-the-mill oats.
Look and feel great for less this new year. At Louis Copeland, there's up to 50% off casual wear and suits. Let the Louis Copeland family look after your family. Shop in-store or at louiscopeland.com.
The outcome of Brexit may not be certain, but one thing is clear. Your business could face serious challenges. Enterprise Ireland can help your business respond to the risks and opportunities which Brexit presents. Plan, innovate, compete and diversify with our wide range of supports. Start taking action now. Speak to your Enterprise Ireland Development Advisor or visit prepareforbrexit.ie, an initiative of the Government of Ireland.
January. It may feel dull and dreary. It may feel like ages till payday. But at least the January sale is on at appliancesdelivered.ie. And if it's bargains you're after, it's bargains you'll get. With up to 15% off TVs, 25% off washing machines, 25% off refrigeration, and up to 30% off dishwashers. Make January great again, at least for a few hours. And check out our health and wellness range. The January sale, now on at appliancesdelivered.ie.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
So earlier on, we asked you to identify our mystery voice. It was, of course,
I wouldn't mind a fella whatever bloody dance he does.
Brian Kerr. Congratulations to Dara Skehan in Kilkenny. You have won entry for yourself and a friend in a Quest adventure race of your choice, Dara. And also you go in the draw to win that weekend in Kenmare on Friday. That main draw is. For more information on the Quest Adventure Series, go to questadventureseries.com. So Dan, Spurs have won 1-0 at Wembley. This is a two-legged affair, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got nice
Hazard.
warm embraces from the managers at full time, and Hazard tossing a shirt into the crowd. So it's a bit weird, like, to think that you're playing at Wembley in a League Cup semi-final. You know, this whole Spurs thing is killing. You know, that's even more of a threat to the FA Cup than anything. Is that Wembley? Everyone's getting a chance to play at Wembley now.
The entire top tier is completely closed as well, so it's not the greatest atmosphere. Things to look out for over the next day or two. Niall Quinn was at the Virgin Media One spring launch today.
Like yourself, Joe, to be honest. Like
yourself.
yourself.
It's true, Six Nations around the corner. Yeah, it's all kicking off.
You're there in all your finery.
Sure was.
Were you interviewed by anybody?
Yeah.
You're on the list. Now, you're on the list of prospective people to interview.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Funny enough, Dan, nobody came a-calling.
Like, that's a bit of a blow, you know?
No, I didn't hang around.
Someone should have, like...
I didn't hang around either to be interviewed.
How does it feel, Joe?
It would not
How
be
are the nerves before you... You've done a bit of media since you've gone into that, though, haven't you?
It's very, very disconcerting, actually, to be being
on the
asked
other
questions.
side.
Don't enjoy it at
Tell
all.
me about the real Joe Malloy.
Don't enjoy that
What
at
makes
all.
you tick?
However, Niall Quinn was there.
Niall Quinn was there. No, like this is something that'll be in the papers tomorrow. Be in our paper tomorrow.
Is it a coup? Is it a rebellion that Niall Quinn is starting?
No. Well, Niall Quinn has spoken recently about. It was the PFEI Awards, the Players Union Awards, and I think he was on.
He's on here.
Yeah, he was on here, and he's did something in the Marion Finucane show on RT Radio 1 as well. Just speaking about a new direction for Irish football, his vision for Irish football, in terms of getting investment in and looking at, trying to set up our own academies, almost a league independent of the FAI, and he would have spoken with the newspaper journalists that were there today in some detail, 30-35 minutes, a lot of content, a lot of quotes, a lot of copy, which I assume, we're giving it a reasonable showing tomorrow, and it will probably, I think, provoke a debate of some kind. There's mixed views on Niall Quinn, I think, but I think, my view on it would be that Niall Quinn is a recognisable figure that's getting a debate going. So you can chip away at various things and points that he's making, but the broader thing that's interesting to me is that a former international is speaking out about something rather than sort of, in my opinion, people talk about change and we need change in Irish football and new voices, and my fear, my frustration would be the lack of people with Quinn's profile coming out to speak. So I actually welcome the fact that he does, as much as his individual ideas may not be for everyone's taste.
Okay. Well, it's not like we're seeing the FAI come out and talk too often about this stuff either.
Not in a radical sense, no.
So we'll read those quotes in the papers tomorrow. Chemical Band back in tomorrow evening. We'll also have Eddie O'Sullivan on Wednesday night rugby. OTB AM, as usual, is on all your social channels. 7:45 AM tomorrow. Richie is on the way after news. Good luck.